What if a god came to save humanity from itself? What if absolute power met absolute conviction? What if the being who had shepherded mankind through 10,000 years of darkness arrived in a universe where heroes still believed in choice? The sky above New York didn't just tear, it screamed. Reality itself convulsed as something impossible forced its way through dimensional barriers never meant to be crossed. Golden lightning struck upward, defying gravity and logic alike, while thunder rolled from spaces between atoms rather than clouds. Electronics died across Manhattan in cascading waves of failure. Cars stalled on bridges. The great metropolis went dark, block by block, as though the city itself was bowing before something that demanded acknowledgement. In the sanctum sanctorum, Dr. Stephen Strange collapsed, blood streaming from his nose. The eye of Agamotto burned against his chest with defensive intensity he'd never experienced. "Wong," he gasped, his astral senses overwhelmed. "Something comes. Something that makes Dormammu look like a flickering candle." Across the city, Wanda Maximoff screamed, scarlet energy flaring uncontrollably around her writhing form. Vision caught her as she fell, the Mind Stone in his forehead resonating with a frequency that threatened to shatter his synthetic consciousness. "A presence," he said, voice distorted with strain, "vast beyond measurement, approaching from somewhere that shouldn't exist." The dimensional tear widened above Central Park, spilling light that was somehow golden and terrible at once. Not the purple of Thanos' arrival, not the kaleidoscopic madness of the dark dimension. This light burned with purpose, with certainty, with the weight of millennia compressed into a single moment. Through it descended a figure that redefined the word massive. 10 feet of golden armor, each plate inscribed with symbols that hurt to perceive. Hair black as the void framed a face of terrifying perfection, all sharp angles and ageless beauty. But it was the eyes that stopped hearts. Ancient beyond comprehension, burning with knowledge that predated civilizations, they surveyed this new reality with the detached assessment of a shepherd counting his flock. Where his feet touched grass, reality crystallized. Living matter became golden glass, frozen in the moment of transformation. The air itself seemed to bend around him, distorting like heat waves, though the temperature hadn't changed. His psychic presence rolled outward like a tsunami, touching every mind within 100 miles. Ordinary humans simply collapsed, their unprepared consciousness unable to withstand even the gentlest touch of his attention. The more resilient experienced visions, a golden throne, a galaxy, spanning empire, humanity united under one terrible, glorious will. "I am the Emperor of mankind." His voice resonated not through air but through minds, multi-layered and impossibly deep. "And I have come to save you from yourselves." Tony Stark was in his workshop when Friday's systems failed simultaneously. For 3 seconds, his tower went completely dark. Then emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red. "Boss," Friday's voice was distorted, panicked in a way AI shouldn't be capable of. "Unknown entity in Central Park. Energy readings exceed all parameters. Quantum fluctuations suggest extra-dimensional origin." Tony was already moving toward his armor platform. "Define exceed all parameters." "Infinite, boss. The sensors literally cannot measure the upper limits."
The Mark L armor flowed over him like liquid metal. Through his HUD, Tony watched thermal imagery that made no sense. The figure in the park registered as simultaneously absolute zero and the temperature of a sun's core. "Right," he muttered. "Another Tuesday in New York." He arrived to find the Emperor standing at the center of a perfect circle of crystallized devastation. The golden giant turned as Iron Man descended, repulsors humming with readied energy. "Impressive technology," the Emperor observed, "for its developmental stage, but ultimately limited." As are the minds that created it. Tony felt pressure building behind his eyes, a sensation like his thoughts were being read, cataloged, assessed. "Look, your goldness, I don't know where you came from, but Earth's got a strict no uninvited gods policy. Why don't we talk about this?" The Emperor raised one hand, not threateningly, just raised it. Tony found himself frozen, not just the armor, him. His neurons refused to fire. His muscles wouldn't respond. The most sophisticated technology on Earth became a prison of red and gold metal. Your resistance is admirable, the Emperor said, lowering Iron Man to the ground with gentle psychic force. The armor opened against Tony's will, leaving him exposed. But ultimately futile. In my reality, I have guided humanity for 10 millennia. I shall do the same here. Your reality. Tony gasped, struggling even to speak under the psychic pressure. This isn't your world to guide. All worlds where humanity exists are my concern, the Emperor replied simply. A Quinjet screamed overhead, disgorging Earth's defenders. Captain America hit the ground first, shield raised, flanked by Black Widow and Hawkeye. Thor landed with a crack of thunder that shook nearby buildings, Mjolnir sparking with defensive lightning. Steve Rogers stepped forward, everything about his posture radiating determination despite the fear Tony could see in his eyes. Sir, stand down. We don't want violence, but we can't allow you to threaten our people. The Emperor's gaze fell upon the shield, noting the vibranium composition with mild interest. Then his eyes moved to Steve himself, and something almost like respect flickered across those ancient features. You speak of threats while your world teeters on perpetual annihilation. I have seen humanity's future, Captain. Divided, you will fall. United under my guidance, you will thrive among the stars. That's not your choice to make, Steve replied firmly. Freedom is what makes us human. Freedom without purpose is merely chaos leading to extinction. The air grew heavy. Thor stepped forward, godly senses clearly troubled. Your power rivals that of Odin at his height, he said quietly, but might does not grant you dominion over Midgard's people. The Emperor's expression darkened. You claim godhood, demand worship, interfere in human affairs. In my reality, such beings are recognized as parasites. Thor's grip on Mjolnir tightened. I protect, not rule. Noble sentiments, ultimately naive. A circular portal of orange sparks materialized nearby. Doctor Strange stepped through, hands weaving defensive patterns. Your presence destabilizes reality itself, he declared. The barriers between dimensions are screaming. The Emperor observed the sorcerer with genuine interest. You wield forces similar to my reality's immaterium, dangerous energies that corrupt lesser minds. Yet you appear untainted. Strange's hands continued their movements. I am master of the mystic arts in this realm, and I cannot allow you to remain. He unleashed a banishment spell, golden sigils spinning toward the Emperor in complex patterns designed to force extra-dimensional entities back to their origin point. The magic struck and simply dissolved. Carefully constructed spells unraveled like wet paper. Impressive technique, the Emperor commented. Futile application. He extended his consciousness, and Strange gasped, falling to one knee as blood leaked from his ears. The eye of Agamotto flared desperately, barely shielding its bearer from the full mental assault. Captain America threw his shield with perfect precision. The vibranium disc stopped inches from the Emperor's face, hung vibrating in midair, then dropped harmlessly.
Enough. The Emperor's patience had limits. A wave of psychic force rippled outward. Every hero found themselves immobilized, held in place by invisible pressure. Even Thor's godly strength proved insufficient. Only Strange maintained a flicker of movement, the time stone partially protecting him. You will listen, the Emperor declared. Your world stands divided while threats approach from beyond the stars. United under my guidance, humanity will survive and flourish. The choice is simple, my way or extinction. A new arrival cut through the psychic field. Spider-Man swung in on synthetic webbing, landing atop a statue. His enhanced physiology made him oddly resistant to the mental pressure. Guys? What's with the giant gold? Wow, that's a really big guy. The Emperor's attention shifted to the young hero, sensing something unique about his adaptive consciousness. You possess gifts beyond normal humanity, yet protect those who would fear you. Why? Peter stammered, caught off guard. Because, with great power comes great responsibility. My Uncle Ben always said, a simple philosophy, the Emperor interrupted. Yet it resonates with principles I once held before necessity demanded harder choices. He released his grip slightly, allowing the heroes to breathe. Responsibility extends beyond mere protection. It requires vision, direction, the strength to make impossible decisions for the greater good. More heroes arrived. Scarlet Witch descended, hands wreathed in crimson chaos energy. Vision phased through the ground, the Mind Stone pulsing. The Emperor sensed both immediately. The stone contained power comparable to the warp crystallized, and the woman's abilities were raw, undefined, bubbling with potential she couldn't comprehend. Another being playing at godhood, he observed, looking at Vision, created by human hands, housing power beyond their understanding. Vision met his gaze steadily. I have evolved beyond my programming. I protect all life, not merely humanity. Noble but naive. Species that don't prioritize their own survival face extinction. Wanda stepped forward, red energy crackling. You talk about humanity like you own it. We've faced others with the same idea. They're all gone. The Emperor turned his full attention on her, and she flinched as his mind touched hers. Your power stems from similar energies as the stone, chaotic, undefined, dangerous. Her eyes widened. How could you? I have mastered energies that would drive you mad. With sudden determination, Wanda unleashed her chaos magic. Scarlet energy crashed against golden barriers in spectacular fashion. For the first time, the Emperor showed strain. This wild power operated on principles similar enough to harm him. Vision seized the opportunity, the Mind Stone blazing as it fired pure energy. The combined assault forced the golden giant back one step, his first backward movement since arrival. Enough! The Emperor released a fraction of his true power. Golden fire erupted outward in a perfect sphere. Where it touched, reality transformed. Grass became crystal. Trees became golden statues. The air itself seemed to solidify and shatter. When it subsided, every hero stood frozen except Strange, protected by the Eye and Wanda, her shields flickering but holding. Your resistance is admirable, the Emperor acknowledged. But I have battled beings that could devour stars. You cannot hope to... He stopped. Actually stopped. Not because of their resistance, but because he'd felt something. Effort. These diverse, unpredictable powers had actually required him to concentrate. Fascinating. I have not come to conquer through force, he stated, relaxing his hold. I offer guidance. A path to greatness humanity cannot achieve divided. Histories full of tyrants with similar offers. Steve managed through gritted teeth. All failed. I am not a tyrant. I am humanity's shepherd. A new voice cut through the tension. Nick Fury emerged from a Quinjet, unarmed except for a device in his hand. From where I'm standing, you look an awful lot like the threat S.H.I.E.L.D. was created to counter. The Emperor studied the one-eyed man, sensing a mind hardened by difficult decisions. Your organization watches for threats, maintains secrets beyond what civilians know. You understand the necessity of guiding from shadows. There's a difference between protection and control, Fury replied. Choice. That's the line. Freedom, the Emperor said wearily. You cling to that concept without understanding its cost. I have witnessed worlds where freedom was prioritized above survival. They fell to horrors beyond imagination. Their populations enslaved, corrupted, exterminated because they lacked unity to stand against darkness. As he spoke, the sky began to change, subtle at first, a deepening of shadows, strange refraction of light, then shapes formed in clouds, impossible architectures, faces that weren't faces, distant laughter that caused physical pain. Strange's expression shifted from defiance to alarm. What have you done? What's coming through? Nothing yet, the Emperor replied. But they will come. The ruinous powers, the great devourer, the ancient machines. They always find divided, unprepared species. He released the heroes completely. They staggered, weapons ready, but uncertainty visible now. I offer a choice. Accept my guidance and prepare for what comes, or continue your resistance and watch this world fall to enemies you cannot comprehend. Thor stepped forward. You speak of threats, yet you're the only being who's attacked us today. Why should we trust you? Use your artifact, the Emperor told Strange. Look beyond the veil. See what approaches. Strange hesitated, then raised his hands. The eye of Agamotto opened, revealing the time stone. Green energy spiraled as he peered through potential futures. His expression grew increasingly horrified. There are things, he whispered. Vast intelligences, hungry gods, swarms that blacken star systems. He lowered his hands, struggling to process what he'd seen. And they're aware of us now. More aware than before. My arrival's psychic ripple drew attention, the Emperor explained. In my reality, I revealed myself after many human worlds had fallen. Billions perished. I would spare you that fate. Steve looked between Strange and the Emperor. If these threats are real, help us prepare. Work with us, not over us. Time is a luxury you lack. The Emperor countered. The technological gap alone would doom you. Tony, having regained mobility, suddenly spoke up. Then share your knowledge. Let us advance on our own terms. The entities I speak of don't grant centuries for advancement. You have months, perhaps weeks. Wanda felt strange pressure building at the edges of her perception. Her power unconsciously reached toward the Emperor, seeking to understand. She touched something deep within his psyche. A vision flashed through her mind. A golden throne, a withered figure, kept alive by ancient machines, a galaxy burning, 9 beings of terrible power laughing as worlds died, she screamed. Blood streaming from her eyes. Vision caught her. What did you do? She touched memories from my reality, the Emperor replied. Visions of what comes when humanity fails to unite. Wanda looked up, her gaze now filled with terrible certainty. He believes what he says. I saw it. Horrors without end. She hesitated. But I also saw a throne built on uncounted bones, an empire sustained by endless sacrifice, suffering justified by survival. What is the suffering of some compared to extinction of all? The Emperor stated flatly. These are calculations leaders must make. Before anyone could respond, Tony's phone rang. It's Hill, he said, checking the screen. Every UN delegation is receiving the same message simultaneously in their heads. All eyes turned to the Emperor. A demonstration, he explained without shame. Your world's leaders are being offered the same choice. Unity under my guidance, or destruction under threats they cannot comprehend. Fury's eye narrowed. That's coercion, not negotiation. Semantics. The Emperor began to ascend, rising on waves of golden energy. I will establish my base on your moon, a fortress from which humanity's elevation shall begin. You have 3 days to consider. After that, I proceed regardless. Thor suddenly launched himself skyward. I cannot allow threats to this world. Mjolnir crackled as he closed the distance. The Emperor turned mid-flight, hand extending. A beam of pure golden energy struck Thor with such force that even his godly constitution couldn't withstand it. The thunder god plummeted, creating a crater on impact. He rose slowly, visibly shaken. He is stronger than anything I've faced, Thor admitted, blood at the corner of his mouth. Perhaps stronger than Odin himself. The Emperor continued his ascent until he became merely a point of light. Then, in a flash that turned night to day, he was gone, streaking toward the moon at impossible speed. Spider-Man finally broke the silence. So, did we just meet Space Jesus or Evil Space Jesus? Because I'm really hoping it's the first one. No one laughed. On the lunar surface, the Emperor stood alone, gazing at the blue marble of Earth. So much potential squandered in division and conflict, just as it had been in his own reality before the Great Crusade. With thought and gesture, he reshaped the lunar regolith. Massive structures began rising, towers of impossible architecture, walls shimmering with golden energy, a fortress that would serve as the foundation for humanity's new empire. As he worked, he considered the beings he'd encountered, more powerful than initially calculated. The sorcerer's reality-bending abilities, the synthetic being's energy stone, the woman whose chaos magic had actually touched his mind. They would resist, of course, just as some had resisted during Terra's unification, but the outcome was inevitable. In time, they would understand, or perish. Back on Earth, an emergency meeting convened at the Avengers compound. Every available hero had been summoned. The mood was grim. Let's start with what we know, Fury began. This Emperor appears human but possesses power on an unprecedented scale. Strange leaned forward, still pale. His energy signature doesn't match anything in mystic records. It's not magic as we understand it, though it operates on similar principles. My scans detected massive reality distortion, Tony added. like he was imposing his own physics on our universe. The energy output could power the planet for centuries. He reminded me of legends about celestials, Thor said quietly. Entities of such power they could create or destroy worlds at will. But he claimed to be human, Steve pointed out, from another reality. Wanda recovered somewhat, shook her head. Not just human, humanity's future, as he sees it. I glimpsed his mind. He believes himself the pinnacle of human evolution, guardian of mankind's destiny, convinced that unity through absolute control is the only survival path, Vision added. Which brings us to the threats he warned about, Fury continued. Strange, elaborate. Strange's hands trembled. Entities existing partly in our dimension, partly outside it. Vast swarms consuming all life. Ancient machine empires. And four presences that feed on emotion, worship, suffering. They were distant, but his arrival drew their attention. So he wasn't lying about threats, Bruce Banner noted quietly. Not necessarily, Strange conceded, but replacing one domination with another isn't salvation. How do we respond? T'Challa asked. We fight, Steve said firmly. Do we? Tony challenged. This isn't Loki or Ultron. This being stopped Thor with a gesture. Shrugged off the Mind Stone. Our usual tactics won't work. Stark is correct, Thor acknowledged grimly. Conventional means will not prevail. The debate raged through the night. Strategies proposed and dismissed. The sun rose on the second day to reveal a massive structure dominating the lunar surface. A fortress of gleaming gold visible to the naked eye from Earth. Social media exploded. Governments issued contradictory statements. Fear and confusion spread globally. The Emperor watched from his stronghold. Their fear, their desperation, so predictable. It reminded him of the early unification days before Terra accepted the inevitability of his rule. With a thought, he extended consciousness toward Earth again. Not to all minds this time, only select few with potential to serve as his generals, his administrators, his primarchs in this new reality. Tony Stark was in his lab when he felt the presence enter his mind. Not an invasion, an invitation. Your intellect is wasted on trinkets? The Emperor's voice resonated. I offer knowledge beyond imagination. Technology that would make your greatest creations seem like stone tools. Join me. Help forge humanity's future. Across the world, others received tailored offers. T'Challa saw visions of Wakanda expanded to encompass continents. Bruce was promised control over his other self. Wanda was offered mastery over her chaotic powers. Even Steve was shown a world united, at peace, humanity spreading through the galaxy without constant warfare. Consider carefully, the Emperor's voice echoed in each mind. What I offer is not domination but transcendence, not subjugation but salvation. The psychic projections ended, leaving recipients shaken. The offers had been crafted with terrifying precision to exploit each individual's deepest desires and noblest aspirations. In the Sanctum Sanctorum, Strange sat cross-legged, the eye of Agamotto open as he searched through millions of possible futures. In each, he saw the Emperor's vision fulfilled. Humanity united, spreading through cosmos. Yet in every scenario, something vital was lost. The spark making humanity unique. The chaotic potential driving innovation. The very freedom the Emperor claimed to sacrifice for survival. And beneath those futures, Strange glimpsed something else. Shadows growing. Entities stirring in voids between dimensions, drawn by the Emperor's overwhelming presence. The threats were real, but his existence here was accelerating their approach. Strange's eyes snapped open. Wong, contact everyone. We have less time than we thought. On the moon, the Emperor stood at his fortress heart. The structure defied conventional architecture. Golden spires rising impossibly high. Walls inscribed with symbols that would drive normal humans mad. He sensed approach before detecting it visually. An Asgardian vessel moving through space with technology mimicking the Bifrost. He allowed it to land. From it emerged Thor, Tony in specialized armor, and Strange, floating on mystic platforms. They approached the fortress entrance, a gateway rippling like liquid gold. As they neared, It solidified and parted into a vast hall containing Earth-normal air and gravity. The Emperor sat upon a simple throne, crowned now with a circlet that absorbed light. "You are early," he observed. "Have you come to accept or make futile objections?" Thor stepped forward. Mjolnir held respectfully, rather than threateningly. "We come to speak plainly, Emperor. You claim to protect humanity, yet would strip them of what makes them human. And what would that be?" "Choice?" Strange replied. "The right to determine their own destiny. Choice is luxury afforded to species, not hunted across cosmos," the Emperor countered. "In my reality, humanity learned through near extinction. Would you have your people learn the same?" Tony's helmet retracted. "We faced extinction before. Still here, not because someone imposed will from above, but because we chose to stand together." Admirable sentiment, ultimately naive. Strange raised his hands, orange sigils forming. "About that, I've been looking ahead using the time stone, and I noticed something interesting." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "The stones are powerful but limited." "Maybe," Strange agreed, "but they showed enough. Your presence isn't just warning us of threats, it's accelerating their arrival. Your psychic footprint spans dimensions, leaving a trail for them to follow." For the first time, the Emperor hesitated. An unforeseen complication. "The barriers here are more permeable." "In other words," Tony translated, "you punched a hole in reality, and now the big bads are using it like a highway." "All the more reason to unify under my guidance," the Emperor stated, rising. "Or," Strange countered, "for you to return before damage becomes irreparable." "I cannot return." The passage was one way. My universe faced collapse. I am here now, and I will not stand idle while humanity faces annihilation. Thor's voice lowered. "There is another possibility, one we propose in good faith. Speak. Work with us, not above us. Share knowledge and power, but allow humanity its sovereignty. Be an ally, not a ruler." The Emperor's laugh carried millennia of bitter experience. "I tried that approach once in early Terra, guided from shadows. Inspired leaders, planted seeds of knowledge. Do you know what happened? Silence. They fell to fighting among themselves, nation against nation, technology weaponized, discoveries hoarded. The age of strife nearly ended humanity before external threats could reach them." "This isn't your Earth," Strange interjected. "Our history is different. Your history follows the same patterns. Different names, same fundamental flaws. Humanity divided while predators circle." As they debated, the atmosphere changed. Air thickened. Colors became wrong. The Emperor sensed it first. "They come sooner than calculated. The dimensional barriers are failing." Strange felt it a moment later. "Something's breaking through. Not one place. Everywhere." The Emperor moved with shocking speed, striding past them toward the entrance. "Witness what I sought to protect you from." Outside, the lunar landscape had changed. The black sky rippled with nameless colors. Stars blinked in patterns suggesting malevolent intelligence. Across Earth's surface, shadows moved that weren't cast by physical objects. "The veil thins," the Emperor explained grimly. "Entities I warned of press against reality, sensing weakness, sensing opportunity." Strange's hands moved in complex patterns, golden energy spreading outward to reinforce barriers. "This is happening too quickly. Your calculations failed to account for variables beyond comprehension," the Emperor stated. "Now we act decisively, or watch reality unravel." He raised his hands, golden light erupting to join Strange's efforts. Combined energies spread across the sky like a net, temporarily stabilizing boundaries. But new ruptures formed faster than they could seal. "As I feared," the Emperor said. "The incursion has progressed too far. More direct intervention is required." Without warning, he placed his hand on Strange's shoulder. The sorcerer gasped as impossible power flowed into him. The eye flared, channeling energies never designed to contain. "What are you doing?" Strange demanded through strain. "Providing means to strengthen this reality's barriers," the Emperor explained. "Your artifact, combined with my might, creates resonance that repels entities attempting breakthrough. But it's not permanent." Thor and Tony watched as the sky stabilized. Unnatural colors receded. Stars returned to normal. But Strange's face contorted with effort, blood trickling from his nose. "I cannot hold this indefinitely." "Nor should you," the Emperor replied, removing his hand. Strange staggered. "What you witnessed was merely the first wave. The true threat remains beyond, gathering strength." "Then we must prepare," Thor said darkly. "Asgard will stand with Midgard." "Noble but insufficient," the Emperor stated. "Your Asgard is powerful by this universe's standards, but pales before what comes." Tony had been silent, calculating. What if there's a third option? Not your way or ours, but something new. "Explain." "You can't return." "Fine. But what if we could send these entities back? Close the breach from this side." "Impossible with your current technology." "Our current technology?" "Sure. But what about yours, combined with Infinity Stones, Asgardian science, Strange's magic, every resource we can muster?" For the first time, the Emperor considered an alternative. Such effort would require perfect coordination, resources beyond what fractured nations would provide. "Then earn their trust," Thor suggested. "Demonstrate value as ally, rather than imposing will as conqueror." The Emperor's expression suggested he found the idea naive, but didn't reject it. "You propose I assist in defending this reality from threats I inadvertently drew. Then what? Live among you as advisor? A weapon deployed at need?" "Why not?" Strange asked, recovered. "You claim to value humanity. Prove it by respecting their right to choose their path, even if you believe it flawed." The Emperor stood in silence, ancient mind weighing possibilities. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decision resonating through reality itself. "I will consider your proposal. But not from weakness. I continue fortress construction. I continue preparations for humanity's elevation. When the full incursion begins, we shall see whose approach proves effective." Not the answer they'd hoped for, but not outright rejection. The three heroes exchanged glances, acknowledging this was perhaps the best outcome possible. "Leave now," the Emperor commanded. "Return to your Earth. Make preparations you deem necessary. We speak again when circumstances demand." As they turned, he added one final statement. "Know this. I have witnessed countless civilizations fall across 10,000 years. I have seen species with greater potential than humanity reduced to extinction because they clung to comfortable ideals rather than embracing necessary truths. I will not allow that fate here. One way or another, humanity will survive, even if I must break it to save it." The journey back was undertaken in silence. Upon return, emergency council convened. Every defender present or via communication. Strange, Thor, and Tony recounted their meeting and glimpse of approaching threats. "We're caught between impossible options," Sam Wilson summarized. "Accept this Emperor or face horrors that make Thanos look minor." "Those aren't our only options," Steve insisted. "We face threats together on our terms." "Not like this," Strange countered. "What I glimpsed defies description. Entities feeding on emotion itself, swarms devouring reality, ancient machines viewing organic life as error to be corrected." Wanda, quiet until now, spoke. "I saw them too when I touched his mind. He calls them ruinous powers, gods formed from collective consciousness, entities representing sentience's darkest aspects." The revelation chilled everyone. Facing not just physical threats, but literal manifestations of mankind's worst impulses was sobering. "But I also saw contradiction at his plan's heart," Wanda continued. "He claims to fight for humanity's survival, yet his method strips away everything making humanity worth saving. In his reality, mankind survives as vast oppressive empire, built on ignorance and endless sacrifice. Trillions living and dying for doctrine they don't understand. Better than extinction," Natasha noted pragmatically. "Is it?" Steve challenged. "What's the point of survival if we lose our souls?" The debate was interrupted by alarms. Screens activated, showing news feeds worldwide. Strange disturbances were being reported. Unexplained phenomena defying natural laws. Shadows moving against light. Voices in empty rooms. Technology malfunctioning in patterns suggesting intelligence. And above it all, aurora-like lights visible even in daylight, rippling with colors causing physical discomfort. "It's starting," Strange said grimly. "Faster than anticipated. Dimensional barriers continue weakening. Can you stop it? Fury demanded. Strange shook his head. Not alone. Not permanently. What the Emperor and I did was temporary. Required his power combined with the Time Stone. Then we need him. Bruce stated simply, whether we like it or not. At what cost? Steve argued. If we surrender autonomy now, we'll never recover it. Tony stood apart, mind racing. Finally, he rejoined them. I might have a solution. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but a third option. All eyes turned. He activated holographic display showing schematics combining Earth technology, Asgardian science, and theoretical models based on the Emperor's capabilities. We build our own dimensional barrier, a shield not just around Earth but our entire reality, using Infinity Stones as power sources amplified by technology derived from studying his fortress. Ambitious, Bruce commented. Impossible, Natasha corrected. With current technology, yes, Tony agreed, but we're not limited to what we have. Thor brings Asgardian scientists. T'Challa contributes Wakandan resources. Strange has the mystic community. And the Emperor? Offer him a choice. The strategist continued. Work with us as an ally, sharing knowledge while respecting autonomy, or watch as we attempt to solve this alone, risking disaster. He won't respond well to pressure, the warrior warned. It's not pressure. It's an opportunity for him to show that he values humanity's survival more than enforcing his own vision. The plan was far from perfect. The technological challenges were immense, but it protected human agency and avoided both surrender and blind acceptance. Work began immediately. The central facility turned into a global collaboration hub. Scientists, engineers, mystics, and off-world specialists combined their expertise toward one goal. Days passed. Dimensional disturbances intensified. Around the world, strange phenomena appeared: shadows behaving unnaturally, systems generating unknown languages, skies changing color without explanation. Panic spread despite official reassurances. Religious leaders warned of the end. Researchers struggled to explain violations of natural law. Above it all, the fortress on the moon remained visible, a constant reminder of the choice ahead. On the fifth day, as conditions worsened, a small delegation was sent. The strategist, the inventor, and the mystic. They were admitted into the throne hall without delay. The ruler sat waiting, expression unreadable. You returned sooner than expected, he said. Has your resolve weakened? We're not here to surrender, the strategist replied. We're here to offer partnership. The inventor activated a holographic display showing a containment barrier design. We're building this as a shield to repair breaches and prevent further incursions, but we need your knowledge. The ruler examined the projection, interest shifting into something like respect. Ambitious. Your theory is sound, though your execution is primitive. You lack understanding of deeper principles. That's why we're here, the mystic said. Your knowledge in exchange for our independence. Help us complete the barrier, and we will not oppose your presence. A compromise, the ruler mused. Unusual for it to be offered rather than demanded. He expanded the hologram, modifying sections with fluid precision. Your design needs these changes. Power must distribute through this pattern. Anchors must be placed at these coordinates. The delegation exchanged hopeful glances. Understand, he said, what you attempt is extraordinary. Even in my world, such a barrier would be considered impossible. You reach for something even higher beings hesitate to attempt. We faced impossible odds before, the strategist said. The ruler studied him. Yes, humanity in this reality possesses a remarkable ability to defy expectations. Perhaps that is why I was drawn here, not by chance, but by resonance. A recognition that your potential follows a path different from the one I once believed inevitable. For the first time, he showed a hint that he might reconsider his assumptions, that his way was not the only way. I will assist, he declared finally. I will provide required knowledge. But know this. If your approach fails, if incursion cannot be halted by your methods, I implement mine. Humanity's survival remains non-negotiable, even if survival's form doesn't meet your approval. Not unconditional support, but more than they'd hoped. Work on the barrier accelerated with the Emperor's input. Insurmountable challenges resolved through principles humanity hadn't discovered. Collection of infinity stones became highest priority. Days blurred into frantic preparation. As stones were gathered, dimensional incursions intensified. Cities reported nightmares so vivid people feared sleep. Animals behaved erratically. Skies darkened with clouds forming patterns like faces before dissolving. The final component was constructed in orbit. Massive array of satellites and stations, linked by technology blending Stark innovation, Wakandan applications, and Asgardian systems. At strategic global locations, facilities housed equipment to channel Infinity Stone power. On Activation Day, representatives from every nation gathered at Avengers compound. The mood was tense. Success meant facing threats on their own terms. Failure likely meant accepting the Emperor's vision, if time remained. 6 Infinity Stones were placed in specially designed receptacles at 6 facilities worldwide. Teams stood ready. Tony supervised space components. Bruce coordinated ground facilities. Strange ensured mystic compatibility. The Emperor watched from his fortress. Psychic senses extended to observe every aspect. He had fulfilled his bargain, providing necessary knowledge. Now he would witness whether humanity could implement it successfully. As activation approached, Strange contacted the Emperor through mystic communication. "There's something you should know. The barrier will seal all dimensional breaches, including the one that brought you here." "I am aware," the Emperor replied. "Necessary for complete integrity. It also means you'll be permanently stranded, unable to return even if a method were discovered." "There is nothing for me to return to, sorcerer. My reality faces its own ending. That's why I came here. To ensure at least one version of humanity survives." The countdown began. Globally, Infinity Stones pulsed with increasing intensity. In orbit, the satellite array hummed, preparing to extend the barrier around the entire solar system. At 10 seconds, alarms blared. Dimensional breaches were expanding exponentially, as if forces beyond sensed impending closure, and made desperate final push. Skies above every continent tore open, revealing realms driving observers to madness. Creatures of nightmare began materializing. Demons of pure emotion, swarms of chitinous horrors, machines moving with terrible purpose. "Now or never," Tony's voice came through. Initiating final sequence. The Infinity Stones flared simultaneously. Their energies shot skyward in 6 brilliant columns. The satellite array captured and redistributed power, forming energy web that rapidly expanded to encompass the planet. As it touched dimensional tiers, they began closing. Reality knitting itself together under Stone's fundamental influence. But it wasn't enough. Incursions were too numerous, too powerful. The barrier formed, then fluctuated, struggling against pressure of entities desperate to break through. "We're losing coherence," Bruce reported, voice strained. "Power distribution becoming unstable." "The anchors aren't holding," Strange added. "Something's actively counteracting us." Tony watched portions flicker and fail. "We need more power. The stones alone aren't enough." On the moon, the Emperor observed the failing barrier with disappointment and grim vindication. He had expected as much, though allowed himself small hope they might succeed on their own. Now only one option remained. Without warning, his fortress blazed with golden light. Energy poured from spires in concentrated beam directed at Earth. Rather than striking the planet, the energy interfaced with the barrier, reinforcing it, stabilizing fluctuating sections. Strange sensed the change immediately. The Emperor, he's channeling his power into the barrier. On screens worldwide, the lunar fortress was visible as the brightest object in the sky, a golden star pouring energy toward Earth in continuous stream. The barrier strengthened, coherence improving as the Emperor's power merged with Infinity Stones, but even combined might struggled. Dimensional tiers slowed but didn't stop. Something vast and malevolent continued pushing against reality itself. In his fortress, the Emperor recognized what was happening. The entities he'd warned of had sensed new reality ripe for conquest. They wouldn't be denied easily. There was only one solution, one final sacrifice. Without hesitation, he redirected his psychic power, not merely supporting the barrier but actively interfacing with it. His consciousness expanded, merging with the energy field, becoming one with the dimensional shield itself. On Earth, effects were immediate. The barrier stabilized completely. Tiers closed one by one. Nightmare entities were forced back, howling as their access was denied. But the cost was visible. The Emperor's fortress began dissolving. Impossible architecture breaking down as maintaining power was redirected. The Golden Giant himself was no longer visible within. Strange staggered. He's becoming the barrier, using himself as the final component, the keystone holding it together. Is that possible? Steve asked, shocked. For a being of his nature? Yes. He exists partially outside reality already. He's transforming himself into a living dimensional wall. Tony's voice crackled with disbelief. The barrier's stabilizing across all sectors. Whatever he's doing, it's working. Across Earth, skies cleared. Unnatural phenomena ceased. Reality reasserted itself as the barrier completed formation, sealing the solar system within protective shell, preventing extra-dimensional incursion. The immediate crisis had passed, but the cost was the Emperor himself. His consciousness apparently sacrificed to become the barrier's living heart. In following days, scientists and mystics studied the barrier. What they discovered was awe-inspiring and unsettling. The Emperor hadn't been destroyed. His consciousness had spread throughout the barrier, becoming its guiding intelligence. He existed now as omnipresent guardian, aware of every breach attempt, actively maintaining the shield protecting humanity. In effect, he'd become exactly what he'd claimed, humanity's protector and shepherd. But rather than ruling through direct intervention, he now maintained silent vigil, preserving the very freedom he'd once sought to restrict. A week after activation, the Avengers gathered. A psychic message reached them all simultaneously. The Emperor's voice, recognizable yet transformed. I have found my purpose in this reality, not as humanity's ruler, but as its guardian. The barrier requires constant maintenance against forces that never relent. This task I accept freely. Can you return to physical form? Strange asked aloud. Not without compromising barrier integrity. This is not temporary measure, but permanent vigil. Forces seeking entrance don't tire, neither shall I. So you've trapped yourself, Tony observed. Become a living shield instead of living God. An ironic outcome, the Emperor acknowledged. In my reality, I sat upon golden throne, physically immobile yet psychically active. Here, I have no throne, no physical form, yet my purpose remains fundamentally the same. There was something in his tone, not quite regret but newfound perspective. A being who'd lived for millennia had found new understanding of his own purpose. I have existed long enough to know change is the only constant, he continued. My methods were forged in reality where compromise meant extinction. Perhaps here, where humanity has demonstrated remarkable resilience, a different approach is not merely possible, but necessary. Does this mean you approve of our stubborn independence? Steve asked with hint of satisfaction. Approve would be overstatement, Captain Rogers. Let us say I have revised my assessment. Your reality's humanity possesses qualities mine had lost. Capacity for unity without uniformity. Cooperation without submission. Strengths I'd forgotten could exist. And the threats you warned about? Thor questioned. They remain beyond the barrier, circling like predators, testing for weakness, the Emperor confirmed. They will never cease, but neither will I. This is the purpose I have chosen, the duty I have assumed. The implications were profound. The Emperor of mankind, who had sought to rule humanity for its protection, had instead become its silent guardian, not imposing will from Golden Throne, but maintaining shield of energy and consciousness that preserved humanity's freedom to choose its own path. In months following, life gradually returned to normal, or as normal as it could be, knowing a godlike being had become the living barrier protecting reality. The Infinity Stones were returned to guardians. Scientists studied the barrier, finding it impenetrable. Mystics sensed its presence as constant reassurance. Ordinary people continued their lives mostly unaware of how close they'd come to extinction. Occasionally, in moments of crisis, those with enhanced perception would feel the Emperor's attention shift, his vast consciousness focusing briefly on events of importance, not interfering, merely observing as humanity made choices, faced challenges, continued its journey toward whatever destiny awaited. 1 year after the barrier's creation, Doctor Strange stood alone on the Sanctum Sanctorum roof, gazing at night sky. To normal eyes, nothing appeared different. But to mystic senses, the Emperor's presence was visible as subtle golden aura encompassing the entire solar system. "Are we worth it?" Strange asked softly. "The sacrifice you've made, the eternal vigil, is humanity truly worth such price?" The response came not as words but impressions. Pride in what humanity had achieved, hope for what it might become, determination to ensure it had the chance. And beneath it all, certainty that had survived millennia. Fundamental belief in humanity's worth transcending reason. Strange smiled faintly. "I suppose that answers that." He turned to go, then paused as final impression reached him. Simple acknowledgement from the being who now existed beyond conventional understanding. "I have found my purpose, not as humanity's master but as its shield. This is not sacrifice, but fulfillment." And so the Emperor of mankind, who came to a new reality, seeking to impose his vision of unity through strength, instead found a different path, not a throne from which to command but barrier through which to protect, not subjects to rule but species to guard, not master of mankind but its most dedicated defender. The stars continued their eternal dance, planets spun in orbits, and around it all, unseen but ever present, the Emperor maintained his vigil, watching, waiting, protecting, not for glory or worship or power, but for the simplest and most profound of reasons, because humanity, with all its flaws and follies, all its contradictions and complexities, was worth protecting. In the vastness of cosmos, as countless threats circled the dimensional barrier seeking entry, they found not the fractured, vulnerable world they'd anticipated, but a shield of golden light that rebuffed every attempt. A shield maintained by consciousness that had once sought to conquer what it now chose to defend. A being who had found at last the true meaning of his existence, not in dominion, but in sacrifice.